Hello and welcome to another instalment of the UK Column Live. Today it is Monday the 1st of October. It's not quite sunny outside, it's a little bit miserable, but hey, we're still happy in here. Mike Robinson, how are you doing today?
Very good. I mean, it is quite miserable outside, and it's even more miserable for people wanting to go from Plymouth to France or to Spain at the moment, because Brittany Ferries has been on strike for the last 2 weeks. They're going to be on strike for about another 2 weeks, and it looks very much like this is probably the end of yet another ferry company. We had Sea France went out of business nearly a year ago, and Brittany Ferries looks like it's going the same way. They're systematically shutting down our methods of travel.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, slowly but surely.
Okay, so where are we starting then, Mark?
First on the menu today is Labour conference, where Ed Balls has basically called for a stamp duty break on housing. He basically wants to build another 100,000. I do apologise. I haven't got the menu in front of me. Okay, the revised menu is actually a story about Jimmy Savile, which has come out about his sexual exploits, and Esther Rantzen has basically said that she feels like she is somehow culpable because she colluded with Jimmy Savile, because she basically heard the rumours but she did nothing about them. Mike, you've had an experience with Esther Rantzen before.
Well, this is quite an interesting story, because what she's saying is that they were more or less aware of what was going on with Jimmy Savile at the time. Now, ITV is absolutely standing by the documentary that they've made. They've got a number of people that were witnesses at the time or experienced his activities. And Esther Rantzen's come out and said that really she feels like she and the people around her were complicit at the time because they did nothing about it. Now, we had a case on our books about 2 years ago of a lady who had reported her husband to social services because he had been abusing her daughter. And when she got no support from social services, and in fact quite the opposite, social services then started to attempt to take the child away from the mother. The mother was only trying to protect the child from abuse. She ran away to Spain with the child. And in fact ended up in Gibraltar, which that for her was a mistake. Right. And the reason it was a mistake was because she effectively ended up back in British control, British, and the child was eventually brought back to the UK. So she came back to the UK and ended up facing a charge of child abduction, even though it was her own daughter. Now, after she came back to the UK, she was. Why have we got no audio?
We've got no audio.
Hello. I've got audio. No, you don't. Come on. Yeah, but
Complete calamity this morning. It's Monday.
Mess. There, it's back. Okay. Right. Apologies for the break in audio there. So, Esther Rantzen was contacted by this lady, and in fact ran a mile from this case. She had initially said that she would help with the case, but once it came to the point of actually helping with the case, she failed miserably to do so. Now, we have long suspected that Childline, which is the charity that Esther Rantzen set up for allegedly to help children, is in fact not helping children. It's effectively a register of children that are potentially at risk of abuse, and those children are being brought into a care system which, as we have documented many times, is effectively trafficking children into a foster care and an adoption system, which is making copious amounts of money for lawyers and for adoption agencies and for social services. So we're highly suspicious about Esther Rantzen's comments. We feel that she has made it clear, she's put herself forward in the last 20 years or so as being an advocate for child safety and child protection. In fact, we see quite the opposite in some cases. So this is one to keep an eye on, this Jimmy Savile thing. It's very interesting timing, and but Esther Rantzen, there's more to that than meets the eye.
And what do you think about? Obviously, we can't go too far into this because we don't quite have all of the evidence in it. But of a culture within, say, celebritism or kind of, the higher ends of sort of performers and actors who have kind of, how can I put this delicately? They have kind of suspicious desires with young people. And looking at the articles this morning, it does seem pretty obvious that there are a number of people within the BBC that knew about this and what was going on. I mean, it didn't seem from the articles that I've read that Jimmy was trying to hide this fact. Do you think that the BBC are they turning a blind eye, or are they, or is there more of a culture within that?
I think that. Sorry, we've lost our audio again. I think that Esther Rantzen and the people around that group, that the people that were in that sort of scene at the time, there was a lot more going on than met the eye. I mean, for example, if you remember a few years ago, Jonathan King ended up in prison for child pornography, I believe. I think there is a lot more to the background of this. Now, I've heard a rumor, and I don't know whether this is true, but I'm sure this will come out as this, if there is any truth to it, will come out as the Savile story breaks. But I believe that he spent some time in Jersey at that children's home in Jersey. Right. So let's keep an eye on this story. There's much more to this than meets the eye. There's, as we know, Operation Bullfinch. The court cases are happening in the not too distant future, like within the next couple of weeks. And so this seems to be the start of a much bigger media campaign, and we're highly suspicious about why that's happening at this time.
And of course, you mentioned Jersey. I mean, a lot is starting to come out now about Jersey, and not only money being trafficked through Jersey, but also children being trafficked through Jersey. So I think, as you say, this is a pretty big story that is just about to break.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on.
So the next story, we can go to the Ed Balls conference for basically the call for a stamp duty break on the 100,000 new homes or new affordable homes that the minister would plan to bring in, and he's basically going to use the £3 or £4 billion that was going to be accrued through the 4G auction to pay for it. We hear a lot about that houses are attributed to growth and the economic growth of the country, and that the economy is dependent upon the housing market. How far do you think that something like this can actually go to fix the problems that we have economically?
Well, it can't. This is purely monetarist thinking. This is about money. It's not about economy. These money and economy are two completely separate things. We have a housing market at the moment which is overinflated beyond that which the real economy can cope with, and so house prices have got to the point where first-time buyers cannot borrow enough money in order to get onto the housing ladder. So, there are limits to the amount of house price inflation that you can push to drive the consumerism which has paid for people's lifestyles in the last 20, 30 years. Economies are about production, about productivity, about the value in an economy is the value of the goods that people can produce. It's effectively the value of labour. So what this demonstrates is that there's very little fresh thinking coming out of the Labour Party. Not that I'm expecting anything different, to be quite honest, but there's no fresh thinking coming out of the Labour Party. They're still living in this cloud cuckoo land world of inflate house prices, make people feel like they're wealthy. If you look back over the last 20 years, people have been borrowing more and more money, and it's all just about debt and borrowing more and more money on a pile of bricks. All that's actually happened is that, think about it this way. What value does a house have to a family? does it have any more value today than it had 20 years ago or 40 years ago?
To the actual family, no. I don't think it does.
It has exactly the same value
It's
because it's a roof over your head, right?
It's heat and it's warm.
So if you're borrowing money off that and the perceived value of that house is going up, well, in fact, what you're really doing is devaluing the currency.
No.
And so, this is nonsense. What we need to be doing is investing government-created money without interest in the real economy. And it's really quite important that whenever the government raises money, however it does it, that the money is spent on the right sort of things. And that's the key point about this.
And of course, they're using this as a flagship to say that they're going to create more jobs on the back of this. And whilst I would agree that for a very small period of time, there will be an increase in jobs as construction workers are outsourcing to more kind of labourers and carpenters and so forth. But of course, those jobs disappear once the houses are built. And then you move in a vast influx of people, a few thousand people, to do what? I mean, there's only so many people that can do like corner shop work, or there's only so many people that can deliver papers or bins or so forth. It's not really creating jobs as such. It's just creating a place to put people.
I think the key problem with this house building policy is that they're driving the demand for new houses by opening the borders to everybody. They're not actually providing the people that are coming into the country with any prospect of jobs. So they what are they going to do? They're going to use more and more greenfield sites to build more so-called affordable housing, and in fact, as we know from announcements made recently, Cameron's government intends to underwrite the cost of building these new estates. But so they're going to build a new estate in the middle of nowhere, and they're going to provide it with no infrastructure surrounding it, so and no possibility of jobs in the local area. So people in those estates are either going to be unemployed and on the dole of some kind, or they're going to be unemployed and not able to get any benefits because actually they don't qualify, or they're going to have to travel, for 2 hours, 2, 3, 4 hours a day. Just to find some kind of low quality job in a coffee shop or stacking shelves somewhere. This is not joined up, clued up economic thinking. This is insanity.
Yeah. Desperation at best and planned at worst, I would imagine. Okay, the next story is back to the banks, and of course they're still being naughty and not lending out the money that's being given them to do so. And basically this has sparked a call from Miliband that banks should be broken up, and that if they don't follow along the lines of government policy in order to give the money to small businesses, then that's precisely what they'll do. Do you think this is an empty threat, or do you think he actually means what he's saying?
Yes, I think this is an empty threat. While I absolutely applaud any prospect of the banks being broken up into retail and investment areas, I don't believe that he has any intention of doing this. I'm not going to, based on what Ed Balls said, and Ed Balls is the economic powerhouse of the Labour Party, and that's saying something, isn't it? Ed Miliband isn't really. It does amuse me though that he has been vilified in the press in the last couple of days since he made that comment. So clearly, some people don't particularly like what he said. Nonetheless, I don't think he has the guts nor the clout to do it.
Is he talking about a proper split with the banks, or is he talking about a split within the offices?
No, that's what he was talking about, a proper breakup
Wow.
of the banks. But like I say, I don't believe he has the political clout to even go near that area, and I don't think it's I think it's just a bit of an attempt to garner support for the Labour Party. But there's nothing else in any of their policies that they've announced at the conference so far, which leads me to believe that they have anything to add. Right. So that's all we need to say about that.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Right, if we could just skip back 10 or 11 centuries or so, and we can talk about windmills. Wind farms are now in the public again, because basically £34 million were given last year to offset bad weather, which basically means that when there's either a surplus of electricity, or that there's a bad weather and the windmills just can't cope, that they'll be shut down, and they'll be the corporations that own that will then be paid for that. And last year we spent £34 million so that windmills couldn't operate. Mike, I know you feel very passionately about windmills.
Well, yeah, because this is yet another example of bad economic policy and bad energy planning, and you know, as we very well know, unfortunately, our weather forecasts are not terribly great.
No.
We give a weather forecast every day by looking out the window, and this seems like the only reliable way to get an idea of what the weather's doing. So what this article is saying is that the national grid has no way of coping with the extra electricity that is generated when the winds get up a little bit. Now, of course, as we know, if the winds get up enough, then then windmills need to be switched off because otherwise they blow up.
Yep.
But even with a slightly stronger wind, the turbines are generating more electricity than the national grid can. They generate a surplus of electricity that the national grid can't cope with, and of course we have no mechanism for storing any surplus energy that's created. Now the problem is that the weather is uncontrollable, and so we can't really forecast when these surpluses of energy are going to be available. And the other thing is, of course, that when we have an extra demand for energy, for example, when the Olympics are on, or when everybody's making cups of tea, or whatever we don't produce anything anymore, so it can't be an industrial demand for energy. You know, so it has to be a household demand for energy. When we have a demand for energy, windmills, of course, can't deliver that because the wind may not be blowing at the right speed or whatever. So really. And the other point is that if we look back over the last couple of winters, it's been quite amusing that the one area of the United Kingdom that relies on wind power the most, which is Scotland, has had to import energy from the continent at times during the winters because it's either been too cold for the windmills to turn, or it's been too windy for the windmills to turn, and so, you know, basing an energy policy on this technology or this lack of technology is nuts.
Yeah.
And we need to be, you know, I've said it before, but if renewable energy is something that people feel strongly enough about, that we need to be generating our energy using renewable sources rather than nuclear, for example. Everybody knows that I'm pro-nuclear, and I think that to go any other way is nuts. We should be going towards a hydrogen-based economy, in my opinion, rather than petroleum-based, oil-based. But if we must go renewable, then, you know, the Bristol barrage would have been a perfect scheme to go for,
well,
because
there was problems with that, though.
Yes, well, the problems with that were we would have had to move some birds or something.
Well, but Mike, I mean the birds. I mean, okay. Aside, it is quite it's an interesting debate in itself, though, because if we're gonna go along with less conventional methods and go for the green, eco-friendly sort of energy, you know, it is a tough debate, because then if you go and destroy habitats in order to do that, it's very difficult, isn't it? That you get that balance right.
We have the technology to create habitats elsewhere. Now, the argument that I would use against that is that you know, after the 1930s crash, there was a massive building program in the United States around some of the major rivers in the United States, Tennessee Valley Authority and these kind of things, and they were building dams and diverting rivers and building hydroelectric generation and this kind of thing. And there was a big environmental outcry at the time. It was generally ignored because actually people needed the income, so these projects were built. Now, 50, 60 years later, then some of these man-made waterways and new water systems had effectively fallen into disrepair, disuse. And there was a big campaign launched by various environmental groups to return that habitat and that environment back to its so-called natural state. Right. And what ended up happening in the United States was a massive spat between two sets of environmental groups, because what had actually happened in the intervening 50 years was, yes, the habitat had been changed, but there was a whole new ecosystem had been created in the meantime. New life, new forms of life had begun to inhabit that area. And suddenly we had this big spat between two environmental groups, the ones that wanted to go back to the way it was before, and the ones who were saying, well, actually, life found a way, and it's it's actually fine the way it is. Let's leave it as it is, because if we change this back to the way it was, this particular bird will not have nowhere to live. So I think it's a nutty thing to do to say that you cannot build this because it's going to affect some bird. The birds will move somewhere else, and if there's nowhere else for them to go, then make somewhere else for them to go. It's not a problem.
Good point.
Right.
Okay, back to pensions, or on to pensions, should I say?
Pensions.
Okay, a new scheme has basically been brought out, or has been brought out, which is basically automatic enrolment for a private pension or a private pension scheme, as I understand it. And basically what will happen is that employers will also contribute to this, but what will happen is I think it's 0.4% of a person's wage will be taken.
4%.
Sorry,
4%.
well, no, eventually 4%.
Yeah.
It begins off at 0.4, and then 0.8, sorry, and then goes on to 4% by the end, which is the government is hoping people will start saving privately for their pensions, because they don't really want people to know that they've stolen the money that they were going to originally give you when you retire. Mike, do you have an opinion on this?
Well, we have mentioned this now. The way that this is going to work is that it's going to be an opt-out scheme. So you will, assuming you know that it's happening, then money will just automatically be taken out of your pay packet. You have the chance to opt out, but I'm not certain what the consequences of opting out actually are. But the government is effectively saying here that it's not sufficient to rely on the state pension. Now, I've covered this before, that there's a £2.5 trillion black hole in the state pension, and I just want to raise this issue again, because this is effectively privatisation of the state pension system, is what I believe this is. Employers will contribute, but as usual, unlike the state pension, these will be private pension funds with massive pension
overheads, presumably.
You will be paying a percentage of for management fees and for performance fees. You won't have any control over how this money gets invested. So actually you don't know at the end of the day whether you're going to have a decent sized pension pot or not. And of course this is not a pension, this is a savings plan for a pension. Oh. So this is just like having a private pension scheme. I suppose it's underwritten in some way by the government, but I haven't noticed anybody commenting on what the scope of that is. Is this going to result in a similar situation in 10 or 20 years' time, where companies, just like they did with their final salary schemes, start to loot this pension pot and use it for other things? No. We've seen final salary pension schemes shut down right across just about every area of business now. I don't think there are very many left, if there are any left, and this is there to replace it, but this is mainly there to replace the state pension, and I think it is a massive scam. Yeah. And it's basically the government saying we are not going to admit to the fact that we did not fund the state pension for the last 30 years, and this is there to replace it.
Yeah, I would agree. I always find it completely bamboozling, really, why anyone, because it's a similar thing with a private bank account for a savings account, although of course the interest rate is so much far through the floor now that it's pointless putting money into a savings account. But what we end up doing is we end up giving our money to a group of people who then, whether it's a bank or whether it's a private pension scheme or whatever, they will then go and invest it in whatever they choose to invest. They won't tell you how much money they made out of it. What they'll do is they'll give you a small little percentage back for your money that what you paid for. Yep. When in reality, what you could have done is you could have done the research yourself, invested the money yourself, and actually made all of the returns yourself, instead of having to give 80 or 70, 80, 90% of your returns to a private investor. I always found the same with pensions. You know, when you could take something that's a long-term investment, something like a precious metal or something like that, which will appreciate in the future. You know, it's a long-term investment. I mean, I'm not a financial advisor or anything like that, but it just seems obvious to me that you wouldn't give your money to somebody who's not going to tell you how they're going to invest it. And that's the thing with these firms; they've got complete control over how they invest your pension scheme money. And to me, that just seems crazy.
Well, there's a number of issues with it. You're right. Of course, past performance is no guarantee of future returns. That's what they always tell you.
Yeah.
It's always a risk investing. But of course, the key thing about this is you cannot buy a pension unless you've invested in a pension scheme.
Mm.
So you can't say, well, actually, I'm not going to give 5% of my savings to some money manager somewhere, even if that's if he makes me any money in the first place. I'm not going to give him that money. I'm just going to save the money by putting it into a high interest bearing bank account or into some kind of relatively risk-free investment, as you say. Now, the problem is you end up with this pool of money at the end of the day, but because it wasn't invested in a pension fund and they didn't get the chance to skim off the top, they do not allow you to buy a pension with it. So that's the big problem. If you want to buy a pension, which is effectively an insurance company these days, these private pensions are effectively an insurance company because you're buying a pension which is going to give you a stable income until the day you die, and they're really hoping that you die sooner rather than later.
Sure.
So it is an insurance policy that you're buying with the money that you saved over that period of time. So you're right, but that's part of the scam.
Sure.
They get the chance to skim their money off the top.
Yeah. I suppose in a macabre way, it's gambling, isn't it? You're betting for yourself, and somebody else is betting against you, aren't they? In the sense of pensions, because like you say, that they're hoping that you won't have such a long life, and you're hoping you will have a long life.
And the government's health policy is making sure that we don't have a long life.
Well, indeed, indeed.
But I've said it before. I'll say it again. Anybody my age, mid-40s or whatever. Or younger isn't going to get anything, I believe, from the state pension pot. No. You're going to have to solve that problem some other way.
No.
Okay.
Okay, we're off to Israel now. Quite a very serious...
No, we're not.
Are we not?
No, we're going to the army.
So another one that's not on my menu. I need to get an updated menu, I think, would be a much better idea. Okay.
Right, we're going to the army because in the new year, the Mail reported at the weekend that 8,000 soldiers are going to be subject to fast-track redundancies, as they're calling it. And these people are all going to be over the age of 45. So just another example of what we've been saying at the column for a long time. We know that they're downsizing the army, but they are particularly picking on people with experience, people that have that are aware of what the military remit was in the past. And it's going to be very interesting because as we've seen the army on the streets over the Olympics, and we believe that we're being softened up to see the army on the streets more often than they have been. What is going to be the attitude of young army guys coming in that are getting the common purpose training? I'm not talking about the guys that are in at the moment, but people that are coming in the future, the young guys that are coming in the future. What happens if they get deployed to deal with civil contingencies? It's going to be very interesting to see, and I believe that the people that are in the army at the moment are generally good guys. I think it's the same with the police.
Well, I was just going to say, I think we've already got the model of this, because I think the police have already been through this cleansing, or certainly coming out the latter stage of the cleansing period, where a lot of the kind of more experienced long-term, having served good number of years officers, were basically given like early pensions and moved on, and then a new breed of young police officers, still some of them very good, but still some of them very vulnerable to impressions been laid upon them by common purpose training and so forth. And we've seen that, a massive increase in violence amongst the police in the last 4 or 5 years. I'm thinking in the back of my mind of that elderly gentleman who always sticks in my mind in his Land Rover, where of course he didn't see the flashing lights and they eventually pulled him over, and then 6 what can only be described as what appear to be yobs jumped on his car and started smashing his car and his windscreen, and they were wearing police uniforms. I mean, to be honest, I think that it's a tried and tested system, and now it's being applied to the army.
That's the way it looks, and I think the people that are in the army at the moment need to be aware of that and cautious of it. So,
I think so, yeah.
But yes, a very nice Christmas present for 8,000 more experienced soldiers who are going to lose their jobs in the new year. Wonderful.
Wonderful start.
Right, so next we do have Israel, and this is going to be the last point that we make today, I think. So,
well, Israel. I mean, the title itself is pretty much laid bare. It says Israel intensifies exercises for ground war following Iran strike. Well, of course, we haven't had an Iran strike yet, so Israel already seems to be preparing for what it will do after it has struck Iran and deal with the consequences, because I'm sure Iran won't take it lying down.
No, it's absolutely clear that Netanyahu and Barak are going to attack Iran.
No.
It's only a question of when, and they are rehearsing for the following ground war.
No.
Now, you know, this is an act of suicide on Israel's part, I believe, because Israel can't survive this without the United States and NATO support. Now, if it comes to the crunch, will they get it? I think if they do, that's going to blow up the entire region. That's their intention.
Yeah.
We've covered this before, but it's just interesting to see them continuing the rehearsals.
Yeah, because of course it's been a slow regime change all the way around the area, isn't it? Because I guess would you agree that Iran is probably the strongest contender in that area, and therefore they probably left them last because they've got less hands to reach out for help, and they've also, I suppose, they've got to gain control of the area a lot more sufficiently before they make the strike.
I think that the reason that Israel is not getting support from the Western governments at this point in time is because Syria hasn't gone to plan, right. And once Syria is gone and Lebanon is gone, and they've got their puppets in place there. Yeah. I mean, it's quite interesting though that one of the stories that we didn't cover today is that the situation in Libya has got so bad now that the Americans can't get their own investigators in to investigate the attack on their embassy. This is a problem that's happening right across the region. Where NATO has gone in and removed a powerful government. The same happened in Iraq. They've gone in, removed a powerful government. It's been left. Effectively, the nation state is destroyed. The government is destroyed. The place turns into a chaotic place, and that's what's happening in Libya. The same thing's happening in Syria. It's going to happen in Lebanon, and Iran is the last target. Well, we'll see. We'll see when that happens, but it's going to happen soon, I believe. And the question is, will Israel go ahead on their own? If they do, they're in trouble.
But you would certainly imagine that Lebanon has got to fall first before they go to Iran, because if they need to take, do they not need to take Hezbollah out before they?
That is the big question. Will Israel move before
because you would
Hezbollah
imagine
is neutralized?
You would imagine if Hezbollah is neutralized, there wouldn't be a need for a ground strike. Or less of a ground defence, less of a ground defence because of the backlash, depending on what the strike is going to be against.
Look,
Iran.
the point here is that Israel is clearly preparing for a unilateral strike on Iran. Right. What more do we need to say? This is an extremely dangerous situation. Yeah. This is coming from this policy is coming from or is being supported by Britain, certainly, because Britain is supporting the insurgency in Syria. There's a bit of sort of manoeuvring going on as to who's going to strike what first, but we're looking at a very serious situation, so let's keep our eyes on it. Right. Okay.
Right, well, unfortunately, that is all we have time for today. Apologies for leaving it on such a serious note, but it is a very serious topic and very serious times. So we hope that you'll go out and enjoy what is left of the not quite nice weather, but still, it's always nice above the clouds. And we hope to meet you next time. Thank you very much for joining.